Alright, today we are going to be revisiting the Shadow Priest. I had a couple of emails from people who had said that they were having trouble with the Shadow Priest doing damage and all that other fun stuff. So, in the background we have playing a random BG with some Shadow Priest action. At the end of this, which isn't that long, it's about 9 minutes, you will go into screenshots of the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, BGs that I did as the Shadow Priest, and the scoreboards at the end to show you the damage in case you thought it was a pre-made or something like that. You'll see the people change and all that other fun stuff. Excuse me. And they were having problems with damage, so I put together a little compilation at the end for you to see the damage, and it's consistent. You're always the top or always in the top 3. And if you're not, I don't know why. So, we can go over that at some point. So here you go. We've got Shadow Word Pain. Shadow Word Pain has a chance to make your Mind Blast instant and free. Your Mind Blast gives you a Shadow Orb. Shadow Orbs are spent on things like Psychic Horror, I believe? Yes, Psychic Horror. And Devouring Plague. Devouring Plague, when it has 3 stacks, hits for roughly 30,000. Its base tooltip says 11k plus 2k per tick per 8.87 seconds over 5.87 seconds, and heals you for 1% of your total health on every tick. Damage increased per Shadow Orb. Now I think in here you will see some 30k Devo Plagues on people's faces, and it's rather funny. So Devouring Plague, when it procs, becomes your priority. You want all the Shadow Orbs you can get. You will notice I am constantly out of mana in the background. That's because I'm not using Vampiric Touch as often, or it's not ticking nearly as fast because people were dying too fast. Vampiric Touch, every time it ticks, will give you 2% of your total mana. So if you have 5 people dotted with Vampiric Touch, every one of those ticks will restore your mana. So in a PvE sense, it's not going to be a big deal. Mobs last a long time. In PvP, not typically. So what you essentially want to do is constantly have a steady stream of your Shadow Orbs, or Shadow Ravens, if you have them glyphed. And there are only 2 things that do that. Your Mind Blast procs, and your Shadow Word Death. Your Shadow Word Death, the first Shadow Word Death you use, because you can use it twice in some situations, the first Shadow Word Death you use will grant you a Shadow Orb. The second one, because if it fails to kill the target, will not. So you may be able to get 2 off, but that does not mean you will get 2 Shadow Orbs. You will only get 1. It has a 6-second cooldown, so you only have to wait about 6 seconds before you can do it again and actually get that Shadow Orb back. So, what else are we talking about? Survivability. Some priests have mentioned that they have a very limited survivability in PvP, especially since I mentioned that PvP power makes everybody feel a little squishier. So, what do we do about that? Well, we have Dispersion. Dispersion is a 90% damage reduction. On all damage, it's usable while stunned, it's usable while feared, and all that other fun stuff. And it essentially will save your bacon. If you eat bacon. If not, you should. It's good for you. Typically I use it when a rogue is opening up on me. If he is using his garrote or garrote, whichever you would like to say it, or if he puts you in a cheap shot and he's just popped all his cooldowns and he's ready to nuke your face, he's going for his one-shot macro. Yeah, if you disperse, you're going to take no damage. Like, literally none. They will barely get you below 5% loss in health. Rarely, if ever. Then you have your Warlocks with their Chaos Bolts that ignore armor and all that other fun stuff. You see one of those coming? Disperse. It makes their Chaos Bolt useless, and then they just wasted Burning Embers and all that other fun stuff. There's one method of survivability. You also have Psychic Horror, which we touched on just a minute ago. Psychic Horror is a pretty neat little ability, especially if you're being focused by a warrior or a death knight or any other lovely melee class. You see your lovely red paladins doing that. Psychic Horror consumes all your shadow orbs, so you will not be using a devouring plague shortly thereafter. Consumes all your shadow orbs and terrifies the target in place for 1 second plus 1 second per shadow orb used, so a maximum of then 4 seconds. It also causes them to drop their weapons for 10 seconds, assuming they do not have it, Pyrium weapon change and all that other fun stuff, which you'll find a lot in PvP. So now you have a Death Knight who's standing on top of you. Let's say he's a Blood Death Knight, because he's Billy Badass. And he now has no main hand weapon for the next 10 seconds, on top of the fact that you've just stunned him for 4. Okay, there's more survivability. Then you have Psychic Scream, which is not so effective against warriors, because they can just go berserk and say, haha, forget your Terrify. What else do we have? We have priests who can put on the Fear Ward, so be careful of that. Your Psychic Scream, 5 enemies, 8 yards, 8 seconds on the fear. Now it says 8 yards, but we've seen a video of me being feared halfway across the map. But that's okay. We'll ignore that. So there you go. You've got some survivability there. You've got your damage reduction. You've got... And don't forget, you can cast Power Word Shield, Renew, and Prayer of Mending, and Leap of Faith, all while remaining in shadow form, which reduces your incoming damage by 10%. So if you think you're just gonna, I'm gonna switch back to, pop off some flash shields real quick and all this other fun stuff, as soon as you leave shadow form, you are taking an extra 10% increased damage, instead of just remaining in shadow form and using a different approach. Maybe you should have put on your shield, maybe you should have hit your Renew, hit your Prayer of Mending, a Psychic Horror, Psychic Scream, something other than leaving shadow form. There's your survivability. So we've talked about damage a little bit. You want to dot everything. Every single solitary possible thing. The more dots, the better, because that increases your chance for Mind Blast procs, and if there's a bunch of people on low health, and you're Shadow Word Deathing here and there, and all that other fun stuff, you're going to have Shadow Orbs coming out of your butt, which is good, because more Shadow Orbs mean bigger hits, and, a dead PvPer can't do a whole lot of damage to you now, can they? So here we go. We're just taking a look at the video now. Well, I am anyway, now that we've talked about our spells a little bit, and some survivability, and what our spells actually say, because we all know a lot of people do not like to read the tooltips on your spells, and they just want to pop onto YouTube and say, alright, you read it, you tell it to me, I will take that information. Now, I could say things like Mind Blast grants a 6% chance to increase your anal critical strike, and if you use it with 2 Shadow Orbs, it makes the player naked. I'm pretty sure you'd know I was kidding. I'd hope anyway, but there's that one person who will go out there and be like, dude, you can make other players naked. No, you can't. Take everything you hear on the internet with a grain of salt. Now, I was just charged by that warrior, and focused by the Boomkin, and I instantly dispersed. And between the two of them, they didn't get more than 2% of my life. Yeah, so then we put on the bubble. I think I put a Renew on. No, I didn't even bother to put a Renew on. I mean, that's the power of dispersion. It is a 90% damage reduction, especially when you see people blow their cooldowns and they are gunning for you. Just use it. It's on a very short cooldown, I think. It's 1.5 minutes, sometimes 2. See a bunch of Shadow Priests standing around me, enemy Shadow Priests. I prefer to focus Shadow Priests because I know the type of damage they can do if left unchecked. I typically don't use Mind Flay. Typically. If it is safe to do so, I will gladly use it because it slows the enemy players and all that other fun stuff. Oh, look at this. Here we go. Let's grab the Zerker power-up since you guys like the cheese. So here we go. Dotting everybody. I'm relatively safe. We'll cast some Mind Flays, get your Vampiric Touches out, even though mana's not a problem right now, but I don't want it to become one. Shadow Word Death's here. Mind Blast over there. It's fun times. It's fun times. Now you'll notice for some reason, here we go, Pretusion. Top damage by almost 1,000,000 in that BG. Don't get cocky, kid. Top damage again, followed by another Shadow Priest. Second damage to a Boomkin, I think that was. What did I get? Oh, I actually got Wrecking Ball today, which was kind of funny. 20 killing blows without dying. Third on the damage meter to a mage and a warlock. Well played, warlocks are dangerous. Top damage by almost 1.5 million. Second in damage to a Shadow Priest by, Jesus, he beat me by 2.5 million. And then that one by, I don't know, 500,000. The short version is at the moment, pre-mop, before everything hits and changes, Shadow Priest is in a very good place.